We have a massive Jim Montgomery update as he has already been hired as a new head coach of an NHL team after his departure from the Boston Bruins. I'm going to be talking about what implications this will have for Boston and really what the reaction is from the St. Louis Blues GM Doug Armstrong as well as the Boston Bruins fan base and community. This is a major update that really nobody expected this quick, but we all knew was going to happen very soon. And before we get into this video, 70% of you guys watching right now are not subscribed to the channel. If you're looking for a spot to get all of your Boston Bruins news, as always, you're in the right spot. Hit the sub button, join me here on the channel. We're covering everything Boston Bruins. As of course, the start for Joe Sacco has been an absolutely fantastic one, but the Jim Montgomery saga is not over, as we have a very shocking Montgomery update, and especially more than what we had thought originally. Now, for those who don't know, Jim Montgomery hired by the St. Louis Blues, and as you will see right here, wow, St. Louis Blues have fired their head coach, Drew Bannister, and hired Jim Montgomery to replace him immediately. Montgomery returns to St. Louis, where he previously served as an assistant coach just 5 days after being fired by the Boston Bruins. But ladies and gentlemen, this is not just it. He's also signed a 5-year contract as head coach of the St. Louis Blues. Now, this is very familiar to a lot of Bruins fans after seeing what Bruce Cassidy did, signing a 5-year deal with the Vegas Golden Knights after being fired by the Boston Bruins, and of course, the St. Louis Blues, of course. But we've all been kind of discussing this. We know that Jim Montgomery, the firing of that, was not really the option that we all wanted to see, but the option that we really had to have at this point. As I've mentioned, it's easier to fire the coach midseason than make any super big moves on the team side of things, the management side of things. So realistically, Jim Montgomery was given the short end of the sword and ultimately fired from the Boston Bruins. But as you see, the result that he had was not, going to last. We knew that he was going to find a job, and a job at that very, very quick. And we also have, of course, Joe Sacco speaking out about what his reaction was and how he thought about Jim Montgomery after he got fired. And this is what he had to say. Pretty plain and simple. He says he will land on his feet. He's too good of a coach. And even Joe Sacco is acknowledging it. And I'm very curious if this is kind of a dig at the Boston Bruins organization. Obviously, Joe Sacco is happy to be a head coach, I'm sure. But it also is a very big change from what we've seen. We saw Jim Montgomery be excellent in his tenure with the Boston Bruins as a head coach, going 180, 80, and 23, I believe, or around that. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but a very good coach. And just because of this season and the results that we've seen in the playoffs the past few seasons, Jim Montgomery has not been given the most ideal opportunity in his departure. And looking at this as well from The Athletic, we have another update kind of here from both sides of the ball and what more on Jim Montgomery and the St. Louis Blues will come. It says Boston is no longer responsible for fulfilling the remainder of Jim Montgomery's 3-year contract. With his move to St. Louis, he joins former Bruins head coach Claude Julien, who was dismissed by the club in February 2017, and now serves as assistant coach with the Blues. Montgomery isn't the only former Bruins coach to land a 5-year contract after being fired by the team. Bruce Cassidy, Montgomery's predecessor in Boston, signed a 5-year deal with Vegas after he was fired by the Bruins on June 6, 2022. So, as I mentioned, a lot of familiarity from the situation from Bruins fans, the Bruins community, and only left to wonder if some things that have happened in the past for the Vegas Golden Knights and Bruce Cassidy could happen in St. Louis with Jim Montgomery. But it's been a pretty bad trend for the Bruins of firing head coaches, and we're probably going to be discussing what could be the real reason or the truth as to why he is going to be gone and why realistically he's had a 5-year deal with the St. Louis Blues. I think a lot of people were questioning that. Where was he going to stay with the Boston Bruins? We've been discussing an extension with him. Obviously nothing got done, but this update right here, of course, I had seen and pulled up a minute ago from Frank Cervalli. Montgomery signed a 5-year contract with the St. Louis Blues. This coming immediately, 5 days after the Boston Bruins had fired him, and leads many questions to really be asked. Was he going to stay with the Boston Bruins anyways, even if this season had ended with him still as head coach? And the option that we see Jim Montgomery not sign a deal, not have an extension done after talks and discussions before and with the season ongoing, and the fact that nothing came out of this really makes me wonder if that was the plan all along, to leave Boston as head coach while Don Sweeney and Cam Neely were at the helm. That's something that's to think about. Obviously, just my mind speaking, of course, and of course there are some more options that probably could come out later, what Jim Montgomery has to say when he gets into St. Louis and whatnot and everything like that. But looking at it that way, it really does make some sense why 5 years with St. Louis now turns into a contract that he may have had anyways. He may have been looking elsewhere in Boston. The fact that he's had the team he did, the team was, going very, very well at the end of the last season, and looking into the beginning of the season, some additions that they've made was supposed to make this team look a lot better, and Jim Montgomery declining a deal, that really leaves us with a lot of questions. But also continuing on with the screenshots that we have here, this is what Jim Montgomery's, or Doug Armstrong's opinion on Jim Montgomery was after they signed the 5-year deal. He says, "That's the goal, to stay in St. Louis. I'm hoping for a well over a decade on the hiring of Jim Montgomery." That's what Doug Armstrong spoke on with his commitment to Jim Montgomery and winning after changing head coaches. And, the fact that we're already getting a decade number from Doug Armstrong really goes to show how important a lot of teams thought Jim Montgomery was going to be for their club. And St. Louis were ultimately the ones who did it only 5 days, as I mentioned. I'm going to keep on saying 5 days because of how quick a turnaround it is for Jim Montgomery and with ultimately the St. Louis Blues. And the fact that we're having this conversation now, kind of the discussion about 10 years as a coach who just got fired for his team not finding success, that has to really be kind of a dig, not so much as a, straight call out of the Boston Bruins, that they want him long term. And that's why the Bruins really should have had him long term. The fact that we saw the success that they had last season, the past few seasons, as him as a head coach. The fact now that we're gone from Jim Montgomery, the team is still the same. 2 wins under Joe Sacco, but still, that's only 2 out of 2 games. So there still is lots more to see with this team, and Jim Montgomery was ultimately not to blame for a lot of this team's failure, a lot of this team's ultimate demise this season, as he done whatever he could. Roster moves were not made, trades were not made, and Jim Montgomery was there to take the blame for that. But another big thing that we're also looking at is this little interesting tidbit here from the Empty Nets podcast. Since Cam Neely has been vice president and or president of the Boston Bruins, this is now the 3rd Jack Adams winning coach that has been fired. And I mentioned the names of Bruce Cassidy earlier. I mentioned the name Jim Montgomery this entire video. And that goes just to show that we've seen the results of when a Boston Bruins coach leaves the Boston Bruins immediately after winning a Jack Adams, and what kind of result that brings. The fact that 3 Jack Adams winning coaches have been fired by the Boston Bruins instead of expiring on their contracts or simply retiring is just absolutely absurd when you're looking at the way the Bruins' success has kind of gone over the past few seasons. The way that the Bruins have really evolved over the past few seasons and gone from Jack Adams winning coach to another coach who may not have had the full experience that the other coach had, goes to win a Jack Adams and now fired again. And really, we're pointing fingers here at Cam Neely, Don Sweeney, and what's going to happen with them in the offseason, I think, is going to have a real big implication on what kind of success Joe Sacco has this season. Now, I don't think it's going to have any implication on Joe Sacco's role with this team or a role as a head coach, but this really is going to show how good or bad this season goes, according to Don Sweeney, according to Cam Neely, and what their future might hold with the Boston Bruins. So let me know what you think about this. And obviously, we have a long time yet until the postseason and ultimately the end of the season when we do see some thoughts going through Charlie Jacobs' head about what could happen to those 2 guys that I mentioned in Don Sweeney and Cam Neely. But it's only a matter of time till we find out. We're seeing success so far, but as I mentioned, it's only 2 games, so we still need to see more out of this team. And more players really wake up and acknowledge what is happening with this team right now. But like I said, that's all I got. Let me know what you think. Some pretty interesting news here, and a lot of kind of interesting stuff that I'm expecting to come out about Jim Montgomery over the next few weeks as he does head coach the St. Louis Blues. But that's all I got. Thank you for watching. Hope if you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well. But I'm signing up. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.